Well, hey guys, welcome to the studio. Today, I want to talk about Atmos, and I have questions about it. I don't think it's something that I'm leaning towards setting my studio up to use it. And we've been having discussions about this in our Facebook group, Recording Tips, which you should come join. I want to tell you what questions I still have about this that I'm not really getting answers that are leading me towards wanting to set up my studio for Atmos. Maybe you want to chime in. Let me know in the comments below. Let's get to it. All right, let me get me out of the way, handsome as I am. This is an image of a Atmos studio setup. And as you can see, center speaker, front, left, right, then left and right, and rear, left, right. Plus you have overhead speakers and then potentially one or more subwoofers up front. So let's say you did the thing. So let's say you bought all these extra speakers and you had a room capable of getting the proper acoustics to do this. Not to mention you get all the software, plus you learn all the capabilities that you need to do an Atmos mix. What's the upside? Well, there's reports going around that certain platforms will only be accepting new mixes done in Atmos, and stereo mixes, well, they just won't let you upload them anymore. But I have kind of a two-part question. First off, let's say you take a classic album, let's say Dark Side of the Moon, and you want to hear this in the Atmos experience. Well, I hear that they're going to have some converters that they can take old stereo mixes and convert it to Atmos. But if that's the case, why wouldn't you just continue mixing in stereo and converting to Atmos? So it seems to me one of two things can happen. They can either kind of disregard all the mixes that have been done for the last 50 or 60 years because it's not Atmos compliant, or they can find a way to make that music work in Atmos. And again, I'm faced with that same question. Why don't I just keep mixing in stereo and running the conversion? Now, one of the main arguments that I've been hearing for people who are promoting the idea of, yeah, let's all get into Atmos, is they pointed out, well, look what happened when music used to be in mono. And when they switched to stereo, there was a big blowback against that of people saying, oh, well, we have to change our recording studios and how we record music and, this will never work. But then that became the standard. And I think there was a good reason why that was. It's because of how many ears you have. You have two ears. So to be able to hear something that favors one ear or the other ear for certain instruments or certain aspects of the mix, I think that totally made sense. We can hear an audible boost in quality and have a better experience when we switch from mono over to stereo. I have a mono button I can hit and I can kind of relive the old days. And yeah, stereo is just better. But they also had something called quadraphonic back in the day. Quadraphonic, and you could buy special vinyl that had quadraphonic, and it was for 4 speakers. It's before they had like subs or center channels like 5.1 and 7.1 and all that stuff, but quadraphonic, and it never caught on. So I think a good question is, why didn't it catch on? It was certainly more expensive to mix that way. I don't think in today's day and age it would be difficult to present music in quadraphonic. The listener would require 4 speakers or, more modernly 5.1, a subwoofer, center channel, front left, right, rear left, right, what they call 5.1. And there is music that's mixed that way. You can kind of perceive that there's an extra spaciousness to it. But not every listener is going to have that system. There's people under headphones. There's people who are going to just be listening on their iPhone speaker or Android speaker. And I might be on the wrong track. I might be completely wrong about my thinking about this. But There's a story of a technology that came out from Roland back in the 80s called RSS. Now, this was actually really kind of cool. A Roland RSS processor would emulate potentially things going around you, or in certain cases over your head, or that type of thing. And the way that they did it, if I'm to understand, I'm trying to remember an old story, they figured out what changed in a sound as it moved through the stereo field and behind you and in front of you, and how your ears kind of resonated it differently. Let's say it was right directly in front of you or right directly behind you. Well, the sound would still be arriving at your ears at the exact same instant, so you couldn't say it was a timing offset. Or what if it was above you? Same thing, no timing offset for that. And what they found was the little curves in your ears kind of made it so you could tell if something was behind you or in front of you. And that's kind of what they were emulating with this technology. Now, if Roland was able to do this with very limited technology that they had back in the day, and you can imagine if somebody wanted to say, well, let's take Dark Side of the Moon and make it into an Atmos mix, they would probably use a similar type of emulation for rear speakers as opposed to front speakers, where they could make it a little bit differently resonated. The different frequencies would kind of, I guess, be like comb filtered out or something like that to make it appear to the listener that the sound came from behind you. Well, if they can do that with a stereo pair of speakers, again, I'm not really seeing the advantage of why Atmos requires this many speakers around you. And my main contention is this: you only have 2 ears. And so I found this video of RSS technology just so you can hear what I'm talking about. I'll link this video below. And I think it was interesting to see in that video that not only was the sound going from left to right, but it was actually going from left to right and then behind you. And you can hear the capabilities that they had, even with that older technology. So there seems to be a pretty big push. I know Apple Music is kind of aligning themselves with Atmos technology from Dolby Laboratories. And it wouldn't be the first time that we saw a major company kind of start to get behind something. And it might be a great technology, but do we need it if we only have 2 ears? And how can we use it without being able to listen to all the great recordings that have been done over the last 50 or 60 years or more? And time will tell, I suppose. Who knows where we will be in 10 years or 20 years, but this could catch on, and I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords. But I just don't feel convinced that this is in any way necessary for me, who's going to be listening to something with 2 ears, and that if I really needed to hear something behind me in the mix, there's 30, 40-year-old technology that allows for that. So am I going to get into Atmos? I am not going to get into Atmos for the reasons that I was saying before. I have unanswered questions that I have not really heard a viable answer for. The technology is going to go where the technology goes, and I tend to follow technology, so I might end up on board with it. But it doesn't seem to make any sense to me for right now. It seems to me like they found an amazing new way to listen to music, which I assume sounds incredibly good. And I know they're going to be putting it in some cars. And I know some engineers are already starting to offer mixes done in that format. And that's all great. But if I'm going to put on Dark Side of the Moon, it's going to sound like Dark Side of the Moon. And if I get a car that has Atmos speaker systems and technology in it, I'm sure it will be available as an Atmos styled reconstruction of the original album for me to listen to. And if they can do it with that album, why can't I do it with my mixes that I did in stereo? Well, guys, I had a lot of fun putting this together. This all stems from a discussion we had over in our Facebook group, Recording Tips, which you should come join, by the way. And we got a lot of work to do. Let's get to it.